Here in France, Mayday 2017 will be remembered as a day of dueling demonstrations and bitter division over what tack to take ahead of next Sunday's presidential runoff. Competing marches in Paris, while centrist Emmanuel Macron and the National Front's Marine Le Pen were both staging campaign rallies in the French capital. The streets of Paris heard from some trade unions calling to vote Macron in the name of keeping out Le Pen. Others more ambivalent, wondering aloud if both candidates will be bad for jobs, wages, benefits, and the welfare state, as France knows it. These are the images you're seeing are on the fringes of the demonstration. They were far-left supporters who clashed with police. 4 riot policemen were injured. Now, as citizens reflect on this long May Day weekend, we're going to be asking our panel which candidates got a better handle on how to improve the lot of the French, what reforms are needed, with or without the euro, which has better answers to the disruptions and the imbalances caused by globalization. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at France's May Day. With us, Alistair Gould, school teacher and member of the CGT trade union. Welcome back to the show, sir. She's the co-founder of June, a startup that offers home delivery of diapers. Carol Juge, thank you for being with us. Who are you voting for?
Macron.
You're voting for Emmanuel Macron.
Yes.
Okay, 100%. Who would you? I know you're not a French citizen. Who would you vote for, Alistair, if you could?
Well, I'm following Mélenchon's advice, although the CGT has advised voting definitely for Macron.
We're going to discuss what is the advice of.
What's the advice?
It's clear. Oh, come on, later.
All right, we'll talk about that because the far-left leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with 2 messages perhaps, and we'll discuss it in a minute. With us as well, commentator and entrepreneur Jakob Hester. Welcome back to the show. You're a German national, yes. So you're not voting in this election. If you could?
I would vote Macron.
You would vote Macron. And Laure Herblay, a former spokesperson in a previous life for Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, one of the eliminated candidates, the one who got the most votes on the right, and who has endorsed Marine Le Pen, and she's offered to have him as her prime minister. You're no longer with his party. Who are you leaning for in this election?
One thing for sure, I would not lean for Marine Le Pen, but I still do not know what I'm going to do next Sunday.
When are you going to make your mind up?
Probably after the debate.
The debate taking place Wednesday, which you'll see right here on France 24. Our show is also called The Debate, and it's on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24Debate. 30,000 in the streets of Paris, according to police, 140,000 nationally. Double that amount, please, says the CGT trade union. Andrew Hillier has more on a May Day where the stakes are high, 6 days before France picks its next president.
2 separate rallies with the same message. Stop the National Front reaching the Élysée Palace. But France's 2 main unions disagree on how to stop Marine Le Pen. The CFDT is unequivocal. It has explicitly called on voters to back Emmanuel Macron.
I believe that faced with the danger posed by the National Front, we have to be clear. We'll have 2 choices on May 7th. If we don't want the xenophobic, racist, authoritarian country promised by Marine Le Pen, we have to vote for Macron. But that doesn't mean the CFDT endorses his program.
The CGT union has also called on the electorate to block Le Pen, but they haven't actively encouraged voters to cast a ballot for her centrist opponent.
Our main goal is spelled out here: block the far right and fight for social justice. We don't want any votes for the National Front. What we want is political change. People are tired of austerity. They're tired of seeing their working rights threatened.
The CGT marched alongside other unions from Place de la République to Nation. Thousands joined the demonstration to protest against the National Front. But as marchers neared Place de la Bastille, clashes quickly broke out on the sidelines. Police officials say masked youths threw Molotov cocktails at units of riot police. They responded by firing volleys of tear gas to disperse protesters.
All right, in that report, Alistair Gould, we heard the head of your trade union say, we don't want votes for the far right. Again, let's clear the air on this. So what does that mean, we don't want votes for the far right?
Well, as I understand it, the instruction is to vote Macron because a non-vote is too risky. But that's slightly different from someone like Mélenchon's advice.
Yeah, Mélenchon was the candidate who nearly finished third, with nearly 20% of the vote. Now, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, in his remarks, saying, I certainly won't be voting for Le Pen, but my choice is personal. It's a little ambivalent what he's saying.
But he never promised. He said he would not instruct people to vote at the very beginning of the campaign. And also, he is such a figure that if he supported Macron at all, at the first time Macron did something contrary to the principles of I've lost his name, Mélenchon.
Yeah,
he would be embarrassed. He's not, it's not fair.
But I think you could argue it exactly the other way around, in the way Thomas Piketty argued it in Libération. Actually, the higher the score Macron will get, the less you could argue it is actually to endorse his program, because if you had Jacques Chirac in 2002 pretended as if all the people had voted for him because it was him, that was slightly unelegant, let's put it that way. But of course, the 80% at the time did not endorse Jacques Chirac's policy facing Jean-Marie Le Pen at the time. And I think, the real question is, I think it's a sort of a very fussy debate. I think Jean-Luc Mélenchon decides whatever he wants. He votes what he wants. You vote what you want. But sort of personally, I think you just have to be. The choice is, can you live with a government of Marine Le Pen? And if your answer is yes, then under which certain circumstances, then you should actually vote however you feel like. I think but we have to be clear about what the nature of that choice is.
On the Sunday night after the election, Mélenchon said, I'm going to consult with the people who are a part of my movement. They're going to vote online, and we'll give the result of that. What is it? It's supposed to be Tuesday or Wednesday that we'll get that result. Is that still on?
I believe so, yeah. Can I pick you up when you say centrist? It sounds gooey and lovely and soft. Macron is a political stance just in the same way as what you call the far right and the far left. People just like the word centrist because it just sounds so soft and harmless. Can I pick you up on that? It's definitely a political stance he's taking. Definitely a political stance. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, he's far right capitalist, if you like. All this far right, far right, left, it's unfair because capitalism or laissez-faire economics, it's as dangerous or as extreme as any other.
God, no, I don't know. Of course, I disagree with you on that point, but that's not a surprise. The vote for Marine Le Pen is not a vote far right. The vote for Marine Le Pen, and people should not be mistaken about that, the vote for Marine Le Pen is a vote for something that represents a lot of terrible ideas. It's social, economical, human Middle Ages. It's not something that is possible. It's not something that should be happening. We should not even be having this conversation right now. Voting for Marine Le Pen is not voting for a viable option. Marine Le Pen is the daughter of her father. They represent a way of thinking that should not be acceptable. I mean, his father was...
And this brings us to, just to give a bit of historical context for viewers, to this concept of what they call the Republican Front in France. In 2002, more than 400,000 citizens marched in Paris on Mayday, 1.3 million across France. It's nearly 10 times less this Monday. Marine Le Pen's father had stunned the nation by qualifying for the second round against incumbent President Jacques Chirac, who would go on to win 82% of the vote, with support from across the political spectrum. That was 15 years ago. Carole Juge, why is it that there were 10 times fewer people in the streets?
Well, I think this election has proven something very clear. This election is a clear victory for all the communication agencies in France and in Paris. And I think that Marine Le Pen is exactly getting votes because she is right now promising everything to everybody. And she's learning, she's not playing the game of politics. She's playing the game of communications. And that, to me, is an extremely dangerous
So she's running a better campaign than
I'm not saying she's running a better campaign, but she could promise literally anything to anybody if that could get her elected, and that is something that is extremely, extremely dangerous.
Laure, why were there fewer people in the streets today than 15 years ago?
I think also that people just realize what has been going on since the last 15 years. Unemployment is going up, inequalities are going up, the profits of multinationals have never been higher, and thus the situation is very bad. People in the banlieue in France have to become Uber and to take
People
a
in the
cab
working
to
class
find
suburbs.
a job, and then Uber says, "Oh, you're gonna earn 20% less." So they have no rights. So they had two possibilities to express their discontent, and it's a legitimate discontent, either voting Mélenchon or voting for Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen is a produce of our society and of what the heads of France and the governments of France have produced for the last 30 years.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think people are voting for Marine Le Pen because they're not happy. But in my understanding, the main reason why people are not happy is because they don't have jobs or they don't have the means to provide for their family. Most people have a very basic wish and desires in life, very humble. They want to have a job, to provide for their family, go on vacation, basic stuff. Whoever provides jobs to these people will make sure that never happens again. Marine Le Pen can never be elected if these people have jobs.
Yeah, Jakob Hesser, fundamental difference between this election and the one in the United States. Donald Trump said that government was part of the problem. Here, Marine Le Pen supporters, they want the welfare state to stay and to protect them.
Much stronger. I think there's a seeming paradox, which is that despite the fact that they have been so dissatisfied and let down by governments which haven't been able to reform French economic policy and French society and adapt France to actually technological change, I think, much more than globalization. Despite that, there is still this hope, and you can see it both on the Mélenchon side and the Marine Le Pen side, there is this hope that some guy or girl is going to be able Deus ex machina to come down and solve all the problems because of a great program and relentless pursuit of some very, very narrow set of ideas. And I think that illusion has been growing and growing and growing, and it's very difficult to fight against that. Illusion. I think the today's young generation who vote, they have no more memory of many of the things that led to the Front National being completely unacceptable 20, 30 years ago. It's gone. Algeria, Bastien-Thierry, nobody knows anymore that, all these things. That's not present anymore. And in that way, it's been banalisé, as the French would say. It's become something, it's normalized as a candidate among others. And I think that's the main driver. While there's less outrage against her, it seems as a legitimate way to canalize frustration.
No, it's not just discontent. It's also a fact. The French economy is not going well for a majority of the population.
That's not true. See, the interesting thing is France's economy is split in two. People who are
better than Anglo-Saxon countries.
If you go above 1.6 times the SMIC, actually France is at almost full employment. The problem is that in France there has been a total disconnect between the sort of more well-paying employment, 1.6 minimum salary. Above that, there's almost full employment. The problem is below that. And it's a structural problem. And I agree with you, France has let down its industries for 20 years. And so nobody has ever done anything about it. It's in part productivity, adaptation to technological change, etc., etc.
It's free trade, it's commercial anarchy.
The main political party, it's interesting, this sort of cult of personality. So you've got Trump in the US, you've got Macron in France, and they really haven't got any history of having any party or election experience behind them. But people are so fed up with the
traditional parties.
Thank you. Well, that's what traditional parties that they're willing to,
Mélenchon's not exactly traditional either.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the Party Socialist and the Republicans, excuse me, which are
the main center, left, center, right blocks, which are both shut out of this runoff.
Yeah, because they're both bipolar, they have two sides. But we must mention the F word on the TV and say Fillon. My goodness, how
the conservative candidate.
How, with his ego, he has let down mainstream politics. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I think there's a lot that has been said, especially by Jacob, about work. I think we really need to rethink the way we think about work and the way we relate to work. I think the problem right now is that people are trying to find a solution to the work problem and the unemployment problem by looking back.
Carole, I heard a remark about this today. The French voters, one person was saying to me, when I speak to them, they want reform, but just not for their particular sector.
But that's always that's France. It's France 101. They want reform, but it's a struggle. But we have to look at things in a bigger perspective. You cannot change history by looking back at history. You change history by reinventing the future. And one of the things that has to be reinvented is the way we relate to work. The city is no longer the holy grail of employment. That has been proven, like Laure mentioned, about the uberization of the economy. And that is something that we absolutely need to work on to create more jobs and to really go full speed.
But do you understand that what you're saying can be daunting, intimidating to the people who are near minimum wage level, who don't have skills and who necessarily?
That's the thing. That's the beauty of innovation and the beauty of opening up these perspectives.
The beauty of innovation is an Uber driver, and then Uber says, "Oh, okay, your pay is going to be cut by 20%, and I can do whatever I want." There's just no rights. It's just the biggest companies that just decide and do everything, and we are just deconstructing all the things that have been built in the last century, and they were great things. We need to fight for them.
But for one Uber, you have 200 other companies, you have stewards, you have lots of other companies that are actually helping creating jobs for students, for people who don't have the skills. For one Uber, whose CEO is obviously quite ambivalent, you have lots of startup companies that are behaving very well.
Have you read all the things about the people who are delivering all the food from the restaurants?
You've seen all those bikes around Paris, where
some were not even paid because one of them
that
just
is absolutely untrue. 100% untrue. The way delivery structure makes it that they are paid whether they're working or not. That's just not true. Obviously,
no, I was not saying that. There was one company that went bankrupt, and the people then were not even paid. And it's just also the problem of that type of company. They are just erasing all the workers' rights. And it's a very clever way to earn more money in the end, but they are just distracting, and that's why people are unhappy.
We're disrupting change. That's what's changing.
It's easy to change when we hear.
Insecurity. And when Emmanuel Macron became minister in the economic department, he brought Brigitte to meetings, and I think that's a reasonable idea.
His wife.
Yeah. But he said, people said, why is she here, please? And he said, I can't work if I'm not happy. And another word for happy is secure. And a lot of the new jobs, short-term, etc., there's no security. People can't get a mortgage, blah, 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 blah.
We're gonna pick up on these points. When we come back, stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.